Samhain is upon us, and I usually like to make a video talking about the themes of the Sabbath each time and where I'm at in my own mind, what I'm going to be approaching and thinking about this year. And of course Samhain is a particularly important one for many of us. Many witches think of Samhain as being the witches' new year, and in general it is perhaps the easiest Sabbath to get a handle on, to already understand the themes. We all come into it, or many of us come into it, already being familiar with Halloween and the themes surrounding Halloween, and really the themes are very similar across the two. I'm sure for a number of witches and pagans, Samhain is actually the first Sabbath that they celebrate, and you probably don't need a lot of schooling on what the themes are. We're very familiar with them, the themes of death and darkness, of turning to the dark part of the year, really turning into the very dark portion of the year. Of course, we have that turning towards the dark half at each equinox, but at Samhain we're really starting to notice the shortening of the days. The time has just changed. Normally, in fact, this year it's changing tonight, so it's actually changing on the eve of Samhain, which is unusual. So we're going to have that artificial sense of an even longer night going forward because our evenings are going to be so much darker, so much earlier. So all of these are very obvious themes. We of course have all of those spooky associations with ghosts and ghouls and witches and monsters, and it's a time of year when we maybe look towards our own mortality in a light-hearted way with Halloween, but with Samhain we have the opportunity to maybe look towards themes of mortality and themes of darkness in a more vulnerable way, I suppose, but that's something that you may or may not feel called to do in any one particular year. For myself this year, I'm not really going to be focusing on a theme of death and destruction because that's just not where I feel like I'm at right now in my practice. It's not something that I'm feeling, honestly, it's not something that I'm feeling well equipped to handle and think about. I was talking to a client recently about Samhain and its relationship to death, and she made a very good point, or maybe it was I who made that point actually, that it's thinking about death and dealing with death is actually a very important part of any religion or any spirituality. It is a huge component of life that all of us have to, or hopefully at some point during our lifetime, have to come to terms with, or find a way of coming to terms with it, whether it's our own death or the death of loved ones, or death in general. And so having a time of the year or a holiday, a celebration that is actually focused around death can be a really positive thing in spirituality, I think, because it just gives us that opportunity to take stock and to look at it and then put it away again, maybe, so that we're not constantly mired in negative thought and so on. But yeah, for me this year, I'm just not there. I actually spent a little bit of time over the summer thinking about death, and it's something that I do come back to again and again because honestly I have not fully come to terms with it. I'm not comfy yet, I'm not there. I know that I have a lot of more work to do when it comes to coming to terms with death, whether it's my own death or death of loved ones. It's definitely something I'm still working around. But I'm at a very tumultuous point of my life right now. I mentioned this in my last video. My entire life is in flux right now. Everything is changing very, very fast, and in a good way. They're all good changes, really, especially for my own life. I mean, I have friends going through various different things as well, and in my own life all of the big changes have been very, very positive. But change is always difficult. It's always a little bit challenging, and sometimes it really brings to light the parts of our life that we're really actually still not happy with, right? So if we have a large amount of really positive elements coming into our life, if we have a large amount of positive change, if maybe some of the parts of our life that we were stressed about or that we felt were lacking in our life, if we manage to fulfill that, if we manage to actually change those parts of our life and bring in the things that we were hoping for and looking for, that often does then shine a light on the parts of our lives that we're actually still not completely satisfied with. And that's where I'm at right now. So when it comes to the themes of Samhain and thinking about darkness and release and death, the way that I'm going to be dealing with that theme, the way that I'm going to be integrating that into my own life is just through the lens of that change and transformation. I dealt with this during the Sabbath at Mabon, or the autumn equinox as well, because all of these changes had started to happen at that time, but I was really just starting to face into them. I was at the very, very beginning stages of a few major changes in my life, but they hadn't really taken hold yet, whereas now they've taken hold, they've really come into fruition, and I'm starting to see the full impact of that, and just how much that's going to completely alter and transform my life. So I think, whereas I was focusing on themes of sacrifice and so on at Mabon, and I was definitely in a mindset of letting go of an old part of my life, and in a large part letting go of the pandemic part of my life. Obviously the pandemic is ongoing, as I mentioned in the last video, but because I and basically everyone I know are vaccinated, and my country has opened up again, and we're hopefully, you know, I don't even want to say that we're not going back into a lockdown because nothing is certain, but I have been able to not only go back out into the world again and live my life fully and normally again, but actually let go of a lot of the anxiety that built up in me around COVID, because it occurred in my life at a time when I was very anxious about a lot of other things, and it just got compounded. And I was aware of that. I knew that I had too much anxiety around the whole thing, more than I needed to, and I knew it was going to be a process of releasing that, getting rid of that out of my life, and moving forward healthily, and having just a more balanced approach to the whole thing, while remaining safe and aware and so on. So that's a big part of my life that I was releasing at Mabon. I was preparing myself mentally to just step back out into the world, physically and metaphorically, and feel, like I say, like I had the freedom to live my life fully and make plans. And sure, some things are a little bit tricky still, things aren't totally plain sailing, and things are always subject to change, but I do suddenly now have this sense of possibility that was put on hold for 18 months. But yeah, now at Samhain, not only, so I had that sense of sacrificing that old life. Now at Samhain, I actually feel like it's more that I'm ready to build something new. And I definitely think I'm going to be looking towards that and thinking about germination. And I know that one part of the attitude in the witch community, I think it's Starhawk who mentions this in her, what's her most popular book called? Spiral Dance. Yeah, I think she mentions in her section about Samhain that at Samhain there is this germination element to it, that the sun child that will be born at midwinter is conceived at Samhain, and that is actually something that gets I think ignored or brushed over a lot in our approaches to Samhain. I think we forget that is a large part of the mythology of this community, and it is in the Irish mythology as well. On Samhain, the Morrigan and the Dagda, they make love while straddling a river in Ireland. That story is in the mythology. So there is this association with lovemaking and with conception around this time of year that is definitely in the lore. Of course, we don't have a full 9-month cycle from now until midwinter. It's really only 6 weeks. But I think there is that sense of something being conceived that is going to be born, not necessarily at the solstice, but in the time of the waxing light, in the time when things are growing again and coming into full fruition, then the light part of the year. So actually, you know, I definitely am going to be focusing a little bit on relinquishing and releasing, because I feel like that is still, there's more of that to be done. I had a realization recently that I have really just not made enough space and time in my life for finding things and remembering things that actually make me truly happy. I've been too focused on big picture things, and I don't usually get this personal in these videos anymore. Actually, it's a habit that I had in the past, and I wanted to take a little bit of a step back from sharing such personal insight into my own life, but I feel called to share this at this time of the year, because I feel like maybe it'll be relevant for other people, because we've all been through something, right? We've all been through this very strange year and a half, coming up on 2 years, and many of you probably have a big chunk of your lives that need to be let go of. And for me, it's not just the pandemic period, it's also the time that I spent in Edinburgh coming up to that. So I moved back from Edinburgh 2 years ago, and honestly, I still often feel as though I'm still having to let go of that and let go of my life there and who I was there, And to a large extent, the people that I was close to there, of course, you know, it's not that there were any terrible divisions or anything, but of course we drift away from people and we don't have the time to keep in touch with dozens of people that don't live in the same country as us. So there are a huge amount of things that need to be relinquished from that time of my life as well. And also just patterns of thought and disappointments that I had. And I really lost myself. And I see that more and more as the years go by, just how much I lost myself while living there. And there were wonderful things that happened while I was there, and I wouldn't take it back for the world. It was an amazing experience, but I really lost my way. It was a bit of a strange turn in my life. And I feel like I'm only just starting to come back to myself now. And so a year ago was when I finished my PhD, and I actually did a ritual at that time to mark that, and to mark that ending of my connection to Edinburgh and my connection to religious studies academia and all of that. But I realise now that a year on, there are still some threads there, and not so much to the physical place and to the people and to the PhD and to all of those things, but just to the person that I was then, to the habits that I got into while I was there and the habits that I started to lose while I was there, all the things that were really, really important to me 7 years ago. And so I'm at a point now where I'm really wanting to take a breather, actually. I know that I have been a little bit less active on YouTube. I mean, YouTube, I've been just barely keeping up with what I had been doing before. But on social media, I know that I have really not been doing a lot, and I'm really feeling the impact of that. I'm really feeling a lack of engagement, and I feel bad about that. But I'm realizing that, I mean, I'm working a job at the moment. I think I mentioned that in the last video. I've started a part-time job that has been very exhausting because there's a huge commute involved as well. And starting any new job is always exhausting, which is why all of that has been happening. But I've been feeling very antsy about getting back into the flow of things and getting back to work and getting back into a good routine of, you know, really spending a lot of time working on the business, working on Anya Orga, working on videos. But I'm starting to realize that I never actually gave myself time off after the PhD, but I never really gave myself an extended period of time where my focus in life was on actually just being happy and finding things that make me happy. And that doesn't mean that I can't work at the same time, but I think it just means there's something about shifting my priorities in there that needs to be done. And I think because I never did that, because I never really gave myself the time and space to consider why I was unhappy for the years that I was unhappy, what was making me unhappy now, and crucially, what might make me happy going forward in the future. What do I actually enjoy doing right now, and what brings me true joy and true satisfaction in life? Because I never gave myself that time and space to really explore that and make time and space and build on that, I fell into this pattern, or just continued a pattern actually, that I got into during my PhD, of cycles of productivity and then just complete paralysis. I would burn myself out completely by working really hard for a few weeks on various things, and then I would just find myself doing absolutely nothing. I've talked about that a lot on the channel and about all the different strategies I try to put in place for alleviating that when it happens. And, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, it's just about getting back on the horse and accepting that sometimes burnout happens, and that's true. But I'm realizing that I think that burnout happens because when I'm going through those periods of high activity and hard work, there's not enough, even though I care about the work that I'm doing, even though it's meaningful to me, there's not enough joy and happiness in my life during those times that will help me be relaxed and for that life to be sustainable. So yeah, it's a pretty big project. I'm not sure if I'm going to make more videos about this going forward on the channel. Like, I might, maybe I'll do like a full happiness project type thing and talk you through what that looks like and what that means for me. But I'm hoping to take this rather seriously because I'm realizing that I really spent a long time of my life quite unhappy, and even before that I was dissatisfied with my life too. You know, there have been very few long periods of time in my life where I could say that I have been truly happy and truly content. And I know that we always have struggles. It's never realistic to expect that we're going to be completely happy all of the time and that we're never going to have any struggles, or that the struggles are only going to happen occasionally. Of course we have struggles, but there just is I've seen a glimpse at a few points in my life of true joy and happiness and contentedness in a sustainable way, and I need to find my way back to that. I've realized that that's not where I'm at right now. And yeah, I mean, it's I know this sounds very negative, but it's actually all come about because you know, one major part of my life has become extremely happy, and I am very, very contented and happy and excited in that portion of my life, and it's really just shone a light on everything else. So that's what I'm actually going to be focusing on this Samhain, and the more I talk about it, the more it seems to me like actually this is kind of the perfect time of year to be doing this, because it's not, you know, when you're trying to build up a level of happiness in your life, it's not simple. It's not an easy task to turn around and suddenly be positive all the time and suddenly be upbeat and suddenly know, and even know what it is that it looks like for you to incorporate things into your life that are going to make you happy. It's a slow burning operation, I think, and it has to start with some introspection and with some real talk, honestly, with myself. I'm going to have to spend maybe the next six weeks or 3 months just paying attention to my own behavior and how the different things that I do in my life make me feel, and what my habits are making me feel. And that seems really perfect for me for these dark months. And there will still be a certain amount of relinquishing, of cutting ties, of cutting bonds, of releasing that old version of me and fully accepting that I don't need to be her anymore, that I am not bound to that version of myself. So I hope that this is helpful for somebody. It's definitely not going to be your average Samhain vlog video or whatever, but I really hope that it has resonated for somebody out there. As always, thank you so much for watching. I've had an influx of new subscribers recently, and if any of you are watching, welcome to the channel. Usually I do things that are a little bit more universal in tone rather than so personal, but I hope that you'll forgive this personal segue, because that's just where my head is at right now. But welcome to the channel. You're very, very welcome. I'm always delighted to see new faces, as I am to see all of the old names that I recognize in the comments. So yeah, if you have any thoughts and comments, do leave them in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and if you enjoyed this video. And I'll be talking to you again soon, and I hope you all have a wonderful Samhain.